Story 1. She's Still Burning. In the early hours of October 19, 2019, a quiet residential street in Snohomish County, Washington, became the center of one of the strangest domestic calls ever recorded by local dispatch. At 3:12 a.m., a neighbor reported a woman standing in the middle of the road, screaming about someone burning. When officers arrived, they found Hannah Whitaker, 34, barefoot, soaked through her nightgown, her hair plastered to her cheeks by cold autumn rain. She was gripping her chest as if trying to keep her ribs from splitting apart. Bodycam footage later released shows the moment an officer approaches her. "Are you hurt?" Hannah shakes her head violently. No, she's still burning. She's these, you have to get her out." There were no visible burns on Hannah. No signs of assault. Just a woman in shock, pointing at her own house as if something inside was still on fire. But there was no smoke. No flames. Just rain and darkness. Officers escorted Hannah to the sidewalk while a second unit breached the house, concerned the resident might be referring to someone inside. But the first thing they noticed was silence. The second was the smell. A faint metallic heat, like burnt dust and old iron, drifting from somewhere below. The Whitaker home was tidy, almost obsessively clean. No signs of a break-in. No evidence of a fire. Hannah's phone was left on the kitchen counter, unlocked, with her last Google search reading, "Why do I smell kerosene at night?" Upster. But at the end of a narrow hallway, officers found a locked door, old wood, sealed with a metal slide bolt that looked newer than the frame itself. It was the basement. And Hannah hugged herself and whispered. She never left. Police forced the bolt. The basement door splintered open. And the heat hit them immediately. Not fire. Residual heat. As though something had been burning there recently. The basement was small, unfinished, and damp. A wooden table sat near the wall, next to it, a metal furnace, an antique wood-burning model no longer up to code, its sides still warm to the touch. Inside, beneath a layer of ash, officers found a metal urn. It was registered to Sarah Whitaker, Ryan's first wife. She had been cremated 9 years earlier. Or so everyone thought. Crime scene would later determine the ashes were not processed by any crematorium in the state of Washington. The furnace told a different story. While units searched the house, Hannah was transported to Evergreen General Hospital for evaluation. Her vitals were stable. Her pupils normal. No drugs or toxins in her blood. Yet she kept repeating the same phrase. "She's still burning. I saw her. She came out of the basement." Investigators initially suspected a psychological break triggered by grief. After all, her husband Ryan Whitaker had died 4 years earlier, self-immolation in the very basement police were now standing in. But the neighbor interviews told a different story. A teenage neighbor across the street reported. Again. She always stood in the same spot. Same nightgown. Didn't move. Creepiest thing I've ever seen. But when detectives showed the neighbors a picture of Hannah, several shook their heads. No. The woman we saw had longer hair. Darker. And she looked younger. No one could identify her. Not yet. At 9:42 a.m., officers found something that reframed the entire situation. Behind a shelving unit in the basement, one that didn't quite sit flush against the wall, detectives discovered scuff marks on the concrete floor. They pushed the shelf aside. Behind it was a false wall panel. Behind that panel, a hidden room. Small. Bare. A thin cot, a bucket, a stack of old romance novels, a toothbrush worn down to the plastic. And on the wall above the cot, scratched by fingernails. "I'm not Sarah." The room was still warm. There was a half-empty can of kerosene. A soaked nightgown, dripping onto the floor. Wet footprints leading from the room toward the basement stairs, and then stopping at the top step. A footprint that did not match Hannah's. Detectives expanded the search radius around the home. At 11:18 a.m., one was found 5 blocks away, a woman limping in the rain, trembling, barefoot, her skin reeking of kerosene. She gave only one sentence before collapsing. "Please, don't make me burn again." Her fingerprints identified her as Emily Lawson, missing from Oregon since 2011. She had been gone 8 years. 8 years without resurfacing. 8 years with no ransom, no sightings, no communication. And now she was here, standing 5 blocks from the man who had taken her life. We now know the following. 2011, Emily Lawson, then 22, is abducted while walking home from class in Eugene, Oregon. 2011 to 2015, Ryan Whitaker keeps her in the hidden basement room. Forces her to adopt the appearance, clothing, speech, and routines of his late wife, Sarah Whitaker, who went missing 2 years prior. 2015, Ryan self-immolates in the basement furnace for reasons that remain unclear. Investigators now believe Emily may have witnessed it. 2015 to 2019, Emily remains in the house. Conditioned. Alone. Dissociated. Continuing Sarah's routines. Still wearing Sarah's clothes. Still using Sarah's perfume. Still being Sarah. She never attempted escape. She didn't believe she was allowed to. October 19, 2019, something finally breaks. Emily climbs the basement stairs, douses herself in kerosene, and reenacts the final moment she watched Sarah live and die. She stands in the street, crying for help. Neighbors see her. Hannah hears her. And the cycle repeats for 4 years. For years, a ghost reenacting a death she didn't die. Until one night, Hannah sees her clearly for the first time. And screams. She's still burning. When Hannah regained her composure, detectives began questioning her. Her account was fragmented, but the details chilled them. Hannah reported that over the past year, she would wake to the smell of kerosene. Sometimes faint footsteps in the hallway. A woman weeping. A presence sitting at the foot of her bed. She assumed it was grief manifesting. After all, her husband had died violently. Trauma plays tricks on the senses. But she also claimed, "Some nights I'd hear the basement door open. And I'd hear her whispering downstairs. Practicing someone else's voice." When detectives asked why she never reported it, Hannah replied, "Because she wasn't trying to hurt me. She was trying to escape him. Even after he was gone." When Emily Lawson regained consciousness in the hospital days later, she was lucid but fragile, psychologically fractured from years of coercive control. Investigators gently asked her what she remembered. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "He said Sarah didn't die right. He said she didn't scream enough. I had to get it right." For 8 years, Emily lived believing she was Sarah reborn, punished if she didn't perfectly mimic a dead woman. She told detectives she poured kerosene on herself, so he would stop yelling, even after his death. When asked why she never left the house in the 4 years after Ryan died, she gave a simple, heartbreaking answer. "He didn't say I could leave." Trauma conditioning. 8 years underground. No sunlight. No freedom. No identity. Her world was a basement, a dead man's commands, and the smell of kerosene. Crime scene analysts determined Sarah Whitaker had not been cremated legally. Ryan had burned her in the basement furnace. The heat damage patterns on the metal matched do-it-yourself cremations seen in other domestic homicide cases. Burn residue on the concrete contained bone fragments and trace DNA matching Sarah. And the urn in the furnace? It held the fragmented remains of a woman who had fought desperately to escape. Ryan's death made more sense now. Self-immolation is rare. But in cases involving identity fixation and delusional grief, it has precedent. Detectives believe Ryan reached a point of psychological collapse, unable to maintain the delusion, unable to control Emily, unable to resurrect Sarah the way he intended. So he burned the only part of his life he still controlled. Himself. Emily saw. Emily learned. Emily repeated. Over. And over. And over. The Whitaker house was condemned within a week. The basement was sealed. The furnace dismantled. The false wall removed. Hannah Whitaker moved to another state and declined all further interviews. Emily Lawson was placed under psychiatric care in a long-term trauma recovery facility. She struggles with nightmares, dissociation, and extreme conditioned obedience. When asked one final question by a therapist, "Why did you keep going to the street at night?" Emily responded, "Sarah died there. She died screaming for help. No one came. So I had to keep trying." A pause. A slow inhale. A trembling exhale. Until someone finally heard me. This case is often cited in seminars on coercive control as one of the most disturbing examples of identity transference and trauma conditioning in the Pacific Northwest. A woman burned. Another forced to live as her ghost. A third nearly loses her sanity witnessing the echoes of a crime 4 years cold. But the haunting truth remains. Sometimes the dead don't stay dead. Because someone else is forced to live their death for them. And sometimes they are still burning. Story 2, 12 hours before dawn. In Miami, the night before a tropical storm is never silent. The air hangs heavy, swollen with electricity. Glass towers hum as if they sense what's coming. And at 11:07 p.m., on October 3, 2021, two figures in black hoodies slipped through the service entrance of a 32-story high-rise overlooking Biscayne Bay. Security cameras later showed them moving with purpose, heads down, faces shadowed by the storm-darkened sky. One of them was Lauren Pierce, age 27, the daughter of Dr. Malcolm Pierce, a respected oncologist who had died more than a year earlier in what was publicly ruled a suicide. The other was her boyfriend, Evan Torres. They weren't there to steal anything. They were there to destroy the one thing Lauren believed could rewrite her father's death. The data servers belonging to her father's former business partner, Victor Lang. By sunrise, the case would become one of the most infamous revenge spirals in Florida's modern true crime history. Law enforcement, FBI analysts, and prosecutors would later marvel at how close Lauren had come to changing the timeline of justice, missing it by only 5 hours. But for now, the building was empty except for the storm shutters groaning against the rising winds. Lauren and Evan rode the darkened elevator to the 27th floor, where Victor. Instead, the hallway lights flickered on in a sterile line, as if inviting her inside. Lauren once spent summers fetching coffee in this building for her father. She'd walked these exact hallways before, back when she believed Victor truly cared for her family, before her therapist warned her that Lauren's grief was folding itself into obsession. Before the FBI started investigating Victor for insurance fraud, medical data tampering, and, most crucially, the falsification of high-risk patient reports. Reports that bore her father's signature. Lauren believed Victor had pushed her father to clean up numbers, falsify trial outcomes, and approve high-risk treatments. When Malcolm refused, she believed Victor threatened him. And when Malcolm died, jumping from the 18th Avenue overpass into morning rush hour traffic, Lauren became convinced Victor had forced him. Investigators found no evidence of homicide. Lauren 4B. Tonight was her attempt to prove it. Inside the dim lab, Evan unzipped the duffel bag. Inside were 4 military-grade chemical disposal canisters he purchased illegally days earlier. Lauren moved from desk to desk, smashing hard drives with a hammer, sweeping monitors to the floor, capturing photos and recordings of every serial number she destroyed. The building's sprinkler system wasn't active. But the chemical smoke detectors were. When? Security. Dad, I'm fixing it. Within minutes, alarms wailed across the entire floor. A second set of alarms followed, the high-rise's internal emergency system, triggered by a sudden drop in oxygen levels caused by the chemical reaction. Down in the lobby, the single overnight security guard tried to silence the alarm but found his console unresponsive. Protocol forced him to call emergency services, but by the time first responders arrived, the building's storm shutters had sealed, and the wind was too strong to risk a forced window breach. Inside the 27th floor, Lauren moved quickly, ignoring Evan's growing fear. She was searching for one more thing. Her father's voice. In Victor's office sat a locked drawer. Lauren used a screwdriver, then a hammer, then sheer force to break it open. Inside was a set of labeled microcassettes, old, outdated tech Victor used for personal notes. Project Helios, Confidential, read the label. Lauren played one. The recording, later transcribed by the FBI, contained Victor's voice and another male voice, shaking, quiet. Malcolm's. Victor? You know what happens if you back out now. Malcolm? I won't sign falsified reports. You're asking me to. Victor? Do it. Or the board sees everything. You do. On the recording, Malcolm's breathing quickened, then dissolved into incoherent apologies. Victor's voice lowered to a whisper. It's your daughter's birthday. You can make this easy. Or very, very hard. Lauren drop. Evan later said that this was the moment he realized Lauren was no longer trying to expose anything, she was trying to avenge something already burning inside her. A third alarm began roaring overhead, the building's fire suppression gas release countdown. Lauren didn't care. She had one more destination. The roof. She grabbed the recording and sprinted back toward the fire stairs. Evan chased her, shouting for her to stop, that they had enough evidence, that they needed to leave. She didn't slow down. Lauren pushed open the rooftop door and staggered into the storm. The wind nearly knocked her off her feet. Lightning flashed bright white against the steel railings. Evan grabbed her wrist as the door slammed shut behind them, sealing automatically due to the building's emergency lockdown. They were trapped on the roof. Lauren pressed the recorder into Evan's hands, her face streaked with rain, sweat, and chemical residue. If Victor dies tonight, at least I get part of my father back. What Lauren didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the FBI was already building a case against Victor Lang. A fully assembled, ready-to-launch operation set to execute at 5 a.m. the next morning. They had every file. Every report. Copies of the damning data Lauren was trying to destroy. Signed statements from whistleblowers. Finance. And 3 months of monitored conversations between Victor and board members. Victor Lang was going to be arrested in just 5 hours. Lauren's operation had been unnecessary. Her break-in had destroyed none of the FBI's evidence, only Victor's backup drives. And her father's supposed forced suicide? The recording did contain what sounded like coercion. But investigators later determined the recording was heavily edited, cut together from several different conversations out of order. Key phrases were stitched to reshape context. The threat wasn't aimed at Malcolm's life, but at his career, and the jump or push line referred to a professional ultimatum, not a literal one. Whether Victor was still morally responsible for Malcolm's psychological decline remains a heated debate among legal scholars. But legally? Lauren's interpretation was incorrect. The truth was already in motion. And she didn't know. At 3:44 a.m., rescue workers finally pried open the rooftop door. Lauren was found sitting on the cement, knees pulled to her chest, rain dripping from the ends of her hair, the recording clutched in her fist. Evan sat beside her, shivering, silent. When the FBI informed her during interrogation that Victor would have been arrested at dawn regardless of her actions, she laughed. A long, cracked, exhausted laugh that echoed off the sterile metal walls. She leaned back in her chair and whispered her final recorded words of the night. I just needed to be faster than justice by 5 hours. And I still lost. On October 7, Lauren Pierce was charged with felony property destruction, unauthorized access to a protected facility, and endangerment. Evan Torres accepted a plea deal for cooperation. Victor Lang was arrested at 5:02 a.m., exactly as the FBI had planned. When? Pierce Kid always was dramatic. He is currently serving a 14-year sentence for data falsification, insurance fraud, and obstruction, none of which directly relate to Malcolm Pierce's death, which officially remains a suicide. Lauren Pierce is serving 8 years in a federal medical facility, where psychologists continue to debate whether her actions stemmed from untreated grief, obsession, or a distorted belief that she alone understood the truth. But in quiet moments, guards report she sometimes murmurs to herself, storm winds, Dennis recordings, and her father's breath echoing in her ears. And always the same sentence. I just needed to be faster by 5 hours. Story 3, Room 341. Room 341 of the Silver Horizon Motel sits just outside the Nevada desert, an aging roadside stop with a half-faded neon sign and a reputation for cash-only check-ins. Truckers know it as a place to sleep for 4 hours and disappear before dawn. Couples know it for privacy. Drifters know it for anonymity. And on August 22, 2019, Room 341 became the center of one of the most chilling missing person cases in the western United States. At 7:13 p.m., a girl with a small pink suitcase checked into the motel alone. Dark hair. Thin. Hoodie too big for her frame. Motel staff later said she spoke quietly, like she was trying to take up as little air as possible. She gave the name Sophie Harper. She was 17 years old. 3 days earlier, her parents found a handwritten note on her pillow, a carefully crafted suicide letter. Police would later determine that Sophie copied the language from an online template, word for word. And next to her bed, investigators found an open chat window on her laptop, minimized but still active. The username belonged to a man who called himself Ethan_College Scout. Sophie believed he was a 21-year-old scout from a university on the West Coast. He promised scholarships, independence, escape. He told her she was special, chosen, different from other girls. The kind of grooming vocabulary investigators recognized immediately. But by the time law enforcement accessed the messages, Sophie had already been gone for 72 hours. The security camera at the Silver Horizon captured everything: grainy, monochrome, timestamp flickering in the corner. 7:12 p.m. A white sedan pulls in. Sophie steps out, glances around, clutching the handle of her suitcase. 7:13 p.m. She checks in with cash. The desk clerk hands her a key with a cracked plastic fob. 341. 7:14 p.m. Sophie walks down the long outdoor corridor. She does not look behind her. She does not hesitate. She moves as if following instructions she'd repeated many times in her head. 7:15 p.m. She enters room 341. And from that moment forward, she never walks out again. Security footage shows no second person entering the room. No one leaving. No sound alerts. No anomalies. Just an empty hallway and the hum of the ice machine. 72 hours after checking in, when she failed to check out and no movement was detected inside, motel staff called the police. What officers found inside room 341 remains one of the most unsettling, unsolved scenes in recent Nevada law enforcement history. The room was quiet, perfectly undisturbed. The air conditioner rattled softly. The bedsheets were lightly messy, as if someone had just gotten up. A single plastic cup filled with water sat on the nightstand, still cold, condensation beading on its sides. Her suitcase lay open on the floor. Clothes neatly folded. Charging cable placed beside the pillow. One pair of shoes by the bathroom door. Nothing was overturned. Nothing was broken. Nothing suggested violence. But Sophie was not there. There was only one message. Scrawled across the bathroom mirror in red lipstick. He said he'd be right back. Investigators initially considered foul play, abduction, trafficking, runaway flight, staged disappearance. But nothing made sense. If Sophie left voluntarily, where did she go? If she was taken, how did someone get her out without being seen? If she walked out on her own, why did the cameras fail to capture her? The Silver Horizon had 3 external cameras. All 3 showed the same thing. Sophie enters room 341 at 7:15 p.m. No one exits. To understand what happened, investigators dug deeper into Ethan_college scout. His real name was unknown. His age was unknown. His profile was a patchwork of stolen photos from real students across the country. His voice was never heard, he always typed. His messages disappeared minutes after sending, unless Sophie screenshot them, which she hadn't. But one thing was clear. He groomed Sophie with precision. The chat logs retrieved from her laptop revealed months of manipulation. Ethan encouraged her to write the suicide note. He instructed her to pack light. To go somewhere private. To never tell anyone she was meeting someone. He fed her lines like, "If your parents read the note, they'll stop looking for you. Meeting me is your real future. Everything else is fake. Once you're in the room, text me. I'll come to you." What investigators didn't know was whether he ever arrived. The motel manager insisted no one else checked in near her. No guest resembled the description Sophie had been given: early 20s, athletic, wearing a university sweatshirt. Then, 1 week after Sophie vanished, detectives pulled credit card records for room 341. The reservation had been paid for online. Using a stolen credit card belonging to a woman in Colorado, stolen the previous year. Same pattern appeared in 2 other cases across Nevada and Utah: teenage girls lured to remote motels, rooms prepaid with stolen cards, vanishing without a trace. None of them were ever seen again. Cameras never caught a second person in those cases, either. This is why FBI agents later labeled the unidentified man the Vanisher. But the details of Sophie's case were different. More meticulous. More personal. When investigators returned to room 341 with forensic teams, they found a faint impression on the bed next to Sophie's pillow, too large to be hers. On the headboard, an almost invisible fingerprint smeared, too smudged for identification. And on the underside of the nightstand, there was a small strip of black duct tape. When peeled back, it revealed a perfectly drilled hole, small enough to be mistaken for damage, large enough to fit a microcamera lens. Someone had installed a camera in that room. Someone who knew Sophie would be alone. Someone who didn't need to enter the room physically because the room was already prepared. Agents now believe Ethan checked into room 341 days earlier under a different alias, set up the hidden camera, then checked out before Sophie arrived. He didn't need to be there in person. He could watch from anywhere. And the message on the mirror? Authorities are divided. Some believe Sophie wrote it herself, conditioned by the months of manipulation, waiting obediently for someone who never intended to return. Others believe the message was left by the perpetrator as a psychological taunt, deliberately misleading investigators. But the timeline revealed one more horrifying detail. At 8:03 p.m., 48 minutes after she entered the room, Sophie's phone connected to an unknown Bluetooth device. No one could identify the device. It wasn't a laptop. It wasn't a speaker. It wasn't motel equipment. But it connected. And then, at 8:07 p.m., her phone disconnected. And powered off. Her phone was later found under the motel bed, battery removed, SIM card snapped cleanly in half. There were no fingerprints. Investigators returned to the motel owner with a single question. Has anyone ever gone missing from this room before? The owner paused, then admitted something he hadn't told police on the first day. Room 341 had a reputation. Guests complained of the lock sticking. Of feeling watched. Of hearing voices through the vents. Of someone calling the room phone and hanging up without speaking a word. Maintenance logs revealed that the room's door had been forcibly tampered with multiple times in the past 2 years, lock mechanism scratched from the inside, as if someone had repeatedly tried to escape. The most disturbing entry was from 6 months before Sophie's disappearance. Guest reported door wouldn't unlock from inside. No staff available. Guest left at 6 a.m. The name of that guest was not recorded. At the end of the official investigation, the FBI concluded that Sophie Harper was taken by an unidentified online predator operating across multiple states. A predator skilled enough to bypass cameras, groom victims extensively, and use pre-prepared rooms where he didn't need to physically appear. But the most haunting detail came from the motel's night clerk. On the second night after Sophie's disappearance, before police had taken over the room, the clerk swore he heard something from room 341 while walking past. A soft, rhythmic tapping. He leaned closer. Tap. 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 When he pressed his ear to the door, he heard a girl's voice whisper. He said he'd be right back. He unlocked the door with the master key. The room was empty. The lights were off. The bed undisturbed. He quit the next day. Room 341 has since been sealed permanently. The door remains bolted, the windows boarded. But the strangest fact is this. Every few weeks, housekeeping reports finding that same plastic cup on the nightstand refilled with water, cold to the touch, beads of condensation forming on the outside. As if someone just placed it there. Or never left at all. Story 4, The Girl Who Climbs. In the winter of 2018, the residents of Brookside Court, a quiet, aging suburb on the outskirts of Cleveland, Ohio, began reporting strange noises outside their homes. It started as scratching on windows, then soft thumps on siding, then something heavier scuttling across rooftops during snowstorms. At first, police attributed it to raccoons or feral cats searching for warmth. But the calls kept coming, more panicked each week. One neighbor described the noises as too fast for an animal, too heavy for a bird, too deliberate for a storm. The witness reports were inconsistent, almost impossibly so. Some claimed they saw a shadow crouched under a streetlight at 3 a.m. Others swore a pale shape darted across their backyards on all fours. None of them could describe its face. The fear grew enough that the Brookside Neighborhood Watch began doing late-night patrols. For months, nothing concrete turned up. Then, on January 3rd, at the height of a -12°C cold snap, the Sullivan family picked up something on their home security camera that would later be described as the most disturbing piece of suburban surveillance footage in Ohio history. At 1:46 a.m., their motion-activated camera captured a figure crawling up the side of their two-story house, flat palms pressed to the vinyl siding, bare feet hooking into seams, body moving with unnatural coordination. Not climbing, but gliding. The figure was thin, female, hair matted, limbs trembling from cold. Her hospital gown fluttered in the wind. She had no shoes. Worse, the timestamp revealed the outside temperature was -15°C with wind chill. And the girl looked unaffected. She climbed vertically, silently, scaling the siding as though gravity was optional. When she reached the second-story window, the window of the Sullivan's 6-year-old daughter, she turned her head toward the camera. Her pupils seemed huge, reflecting the infrared glow. Then she pressed her face against the glass. And stayed there. For 3 hours, without moving. The video shows her breathing once every few minutes, her chest rising in slow, unnatural waves. Snow accumulated on her back and shoulders. Ice formed on her hair. Yet she remained completely conscious, eyes unblinking. The next morning, when the footage went viral on local news, the Sullivans locked their windows, installed more cameras, and refused to sleep in the house until police investigated. Authorities quickly identified the girl. Her name was Kaylee Monroe, age 24. She had escaped from Lakeside Psychiatric Pavilion, an inpatient mental health facility, 3 days earlier during a staff rotation change. Nurses described her as nonverbal, severely dissociative, with a history of tactile hallucinations and an unusual pain response. But the most chilling detail in her file was a line buried in her intake report. Patient insists her little brother is being moved from house to house to hide him from her. Kaylee had no living siblings. Her only brother, Thomas, had died when she was 8. Kaylee was found 9 kilometers from the hospital, barefoot in the snow, knocking on doors at random, leaving scratch marks on windows. When police approached her, she did not run. She dropped to the ground on all fours, her limbs locking into a strange spider-like arch. Bodycam footage clearly captured her whisper. They moved him again. Authorities restrained her without incident. Hospital staff were brought in for immediate transfer. But within 48 hours, Brookside Court was hit with a second wave of reports. Residents claimed they were hearing noises on their roofs again, scratches at their windows, and knocks on their children's bedroom doors at night. Police assumed it was mass panic triggered by Kaylee's dramatic arrest. Until, during the review of neighborhood footage, investigators noticed something alarming. The timestamp of the Sullivans' footage did not match Kaylee's known escape window. She had been recorded climbing the Sullivan house before she escaped the facility. 2 days before, when she was still listed as present in the hospital, undergoing routine observation. Nurses insisted Kaylee never left her room that night. Her vitals were logged at midnight and 4 a.m. She had not been missing at any point. Her hospital bed sensors showed no movement. Her door remained locked from the outside. Her location was confirmed. But so was the footage. Authorities were forced to consider the possibility that someone who resembled Kaylee, someone disturbingly similar, had been prowling Brookside Court before her documented escape. Police canvassed the area again, questioning residents about Kaylee's connection to the neighborhood. One elderly woman, Margaret Ellison, recognized the name immediately. Margaret lived 3 houses down from the Sullivans and had been in Brookside Court since the early 1980s. She told investigators she used to babysit for a family named Monroe, Kaylee's parents, long before they'd moved out of state. Her voice trembled as she delivered the detail that changed the direction of the case. Kaylee had a brother. A little boy. He lived here. In that neighborhood. Before they took him away. Records confirmed it. The Monroes had lived in Brookside Court for 2 years when Kaylee was a child. Her younger brother, Thomas Monroe, had indeed gone missing at age 4. Officially, he drowned in a retention pond behind the subdivision. No charges were ever filed. No autopsy photos were included in the case file, reportedly due to state handling errors. But Margaret insisted she saw Kaylee's father carrying Thomas out of the house late one night wrapped in a blanket. She claimed she heard a muffled argument between the parents. She claimed Kaylee had scratched at her window the next morning, begging to come inside. Police never followed up back then. Now, they found themselves reopening a decades-old missing child case. When Kaylee regained partial clarity in the psych ward days after her recapture, detectives questioned her about the videos. Her responses chilled them. She said she climbed houses because they move him every few years. She said the houses always change shape. She said Thomas calls from their windows. She said parents pretend not to hear him. And, most disturbingly, he's small enough now to fit in the walls. Investigators pressed further, asking her what she meant by fit in the walls. Kaylee looked past them, eyes glazed, and whispered, "You don't bury little brothers. You hide them." A forensic team returned to the Sullivans' house. They searched the walls and attic. They found nothing. But when they expanded their search to the entire block, dogs alerted twice, once at an abandoned shed and once behind the Ellison residence. Soil samples were taken, though no human remains were found at either site. Still, something lingered. Kaylee had been climbing homes at random, but the homes, as Margaret Ellison pointed out, were all built on the same blueprint. Identical structures. The same floor plan. The same crawl spaces. And the same internal wall cavities, wide enough for a child's body, if hidden decades earlier. The police eventually concluded that Kaylee had suffered a severe psychotic break tied to unresolved childhood trauma. The Sullivan footage was declared genuine but attributed to Kaylee's physical agility, hypothermia delirium, and extreme pain tolerance, in none of which explained her 3-hour stillness or the timeline discrepancy. Kaylee was transferred to a long-term psychiatric institution. She remains nonverbal most days. On others, she draws pictures, houses, windows, walls. Always a small smiling boy standing behind a window. Always the same message at the bottom. They keep moving him. Brookside Court residents still claim they hear tapping on their windows on winter nights. Police blame branches, wind, or small animals. But the Sullivans moved out within a month. Margaret Ellison moved into assisted living. The houses remained the same. And every January 3rd, on the anniversary of the Sullivan footage, the neighborhood reports the same sound. Tap. 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 A child knocking from somewhere inside the walls. Story 5, The Dog Knew. On January 14, 2022, at 2:17 a.m., Montana State Trooper Daniel Krause initiated what he believed would be a routine traffic stop on a desolate stretch of Highway 90, just outside Billings. The temperature was -30°C, the kind of dry cold that freezes eyelashes and kills exposed skin in minutes. Snow drifted in slow spirals across the asphalt. The dashcam footage begins with a simple observation. A faded blue pickup truck. With a shattered left tail light. Traveling 12 miles under the limit. Krause activates his lights. The truck pulls over without hesitation. Nothing about this stop should have been unusual. Until the dog in the backseat reacted. When Trooper Krause approached the driver's side, he saw an elderly man behind the wheel, white beard, worn denim jacket, cracked leather gloves. He looked harmless. Fragile, even. His license identified him as William Billy Grant, age 77. But the dog, a Belgian Malinois K9 named Luna, was not looking at him like an old man. The moment Krause got close, Luna began snarling in her cage, teeth bared, muscles coiled, barking with a ferocity her handler had never seen outside active combat training. Krause called out, "Easy, girl. Easy." But Luna wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on Billy Grant. Not on his hands, not his pockets, but on the empty air in front of his face. As though she could see something no human could. Trooper Krause later testified, "I've never seen her behave like that. She wasn't threatening him. She was warning us." Billy, for his part, stayed perfectly calm. "She smells fear," he said pleasantly. "Dogs don't like fear." But Billy wasn't afraid. Billy was smiling. That smile would haunt the trooper for years. Because it wasn't nervous. Or startled. Or confused. It was recognition. As if the dog's reaction made perfect sense to him. Procedural safety required Krause to ask Billy to step out of the vehicle. The old man moved slowly, joints cracking, breath fogging in the freezing air. The moment he stepped away from the driver's door, Luna lunged again, trying desperately to escape her cage, claws scraping the metal floor, foam collecting at the corners of her mouth. She wasn't behaving like she sensed contraband. She was behaving like she sensed a predator. A second unit arrived due to Luna's escalating distress. Officers asked Billy if he had weapons, drugs, or hazardous materials in the vehicle. He chuckled. "Son, at my age, the only dangerous thing I carry is arthritis." The officers weren't amused. Billy kept smiling. But when they asked for permission to search the vehicle, his smile tightened, just slightly. "Search if you must. I've lived a long life. I've got nothing left to hide." That was the first lie. Inside the truck bed, beneath old blankets and rusted tools, officers found a locked metal footlocker, dented at the corners, stained with something dark. Luna, still restrained, entered a kind of frenzy the moment they neared it, her paws slamming the cage door, her teeth gnashing at the bars. Billy tilted his head, amused. "She knows what's in there, don't she?" The lock was cut. The lid creaked open. Inside, officers found a .38 revolver with serial numbers filed off. Exactly 3 spent shell casings. A police badge from 1977, rusted, cracked at the edge. A man's cigarette tin from the same era. And inside the tin, a shriveled, preserved human pinky finger, cut cleanly at the knuckle. The officers froze. Billy did not. He stroked his beard and murmured, "You're just like Ranger. The dog I killed first that night." Luna responded with a sound halfway between a howl and a scream. A fingerprint analysis on scene led to a match that would blow open a 45-year-old cold case. The man calling himself William Billy Grant was actually Raymond James Cole, a fugitive wanted since 1977 for the murder of Montana State Trooper Dave Morrison. According to archived records, Morrison pulled Cole over on Highway 90 for a broken taillight. The encounter should have been simple. Instead, Cole shot and killed Morrison, and before fleeing the scene, he reportedly shot the officer's K9, a German shepherd named Ranger, point blank. Cole vanished into the blizzard that night. His trail went cold within hours. The revolver found in Billy's footlocker contained the exact 3 bullets fired in 1977. One that killed Morrison. One that finished Ranger. One that struck Morrison's radio, silencing his call for backup. Ballistics confirmed the match within 24 hours. Case closed. Fugitive found. Justice, delayed nearly half a century, finally achievable. But the question remained. How did Luna know? Why did she react to him like she was recognizing a scent that no longer existed, from a crime that happened decades before she was born? Her handler had one theory. An unsettling one. Dogs react to fear, anger, ill intent, certain types of hormonal signatures. And canine officers, like Ranger, are often killed fighting for their handlers. Some trainers believe that surviving canines develop a kind of sixth sense for those who harm their own kind. But Luna's reaction wasn't just defensive. It was targeted, focused, personal. As if she recognized him. As if she had been waiting for him. Trooper Krause put it plainly. She looked at him the way a soldier looks at the man who killed his brother. During interrogation, Raymond Cole, now a frail old man in an orange jumpsuit, spoke freely, almost eagerly. He described the 1977 murder without remorse, recounting it like a memory from a lifetime he didn't regret. And every time detectives mentioned the new K9, Luna, he smiled wider. Dogs remember. They pass memory in their blood. They always have. Detectives dismissed it as rambling. A violent old man trying to be cryptic. But the way he said it, casual, confident, made the room go cold. When asked why he kept the finger of the officer he killed, Cole simply shrugged. Trophies help you remember who you are. Yet when asked why he kept Ranger's bullet casing, his answer changed. He leaned forward, eyes gleaming with something almost juvenile. That one wasn't a trophy. That one was a promise. Detectives pressed him to explain, but he only smiled. The dog knew. Luna was examined by a veterinary behavior specialist after the arrest. No neurological issues. No trauma triggers. No abnormalities. Yet every time Cole was brought near her, even in handcuffs, even in a locked holding cell, Luna reacted identically. Furious. Alarmed. Desperate. Not afraid. Protective. The behavioral specialist made a chilling observation. This isn't aggression. This is recognition. But recognition of what? The scent of gunpowder residue embedded in Cole's paws? The metallic smell of old blood on the revolver? Or something older, something Luna didn't learn, but inherited? It was impossible to prove. But easy to feel. Everyone who witnessed the moment Luna first laid eyes on Cole described the same sensation. Like watching a ghost recognize its killer. Raymond Cole died in prison 8 months later from pneumonia complications. In his final recorded conversation with a chaplain, he said, "I escaped the last dog. But not this one." He died smiling. Luna attended Morrison's memorial shortly after, standing beside the engraved plaque marking the officer and his canine partner. She sat for hours, unmoving, staring at the names. She never reacted that way to another suspect again. But sometimes, late at night, Trooper Krause swears he sees her staring at the highway, ears raised, body tense. As if waiting. Not for someone, but for something she was born already knowing. Story 6, Apartment 12B, The Quiet Man. In luxury high-rises, silence is often mistaken for safety. Residents assume the thick walls, carpeted hallways, and keycard entries keep danger outside. But in the winter of 2020, at the Birchwood Towers condominium complex in Atlanta, Georgia, one of the city's most expensive residential towers, silence became the very thing that hid a nightmare. The building catered to attorneys, tech executives, and traveling professionals. Nothing about it suggested criminal activity. No disturbances. No suspicious tenants. Just polished elevators, doormen in tailored uniforms, and floor-to-ceiling windows with city views. Apartment 12B was considered one of the quieter units in the building. Neighbors rarely saw the tenant, Nathan Cole, except during the evening when he collected mail or carried groceries. He was polite. Unassuming. Bland in a way that felt intentional. Nobody ever heard his sister. Because Nathan didn't allow Rebecca Cole, age 19, to make a sound. The first complaint arrived in August 2020, months before the truth came out. A neighbor on the 12th floor called the concierge at 1:20 a.m. to report a strange crying sound coming from 12B. The concierge sent security to check, but Nathan answered the door instantly, wide awake, wearing headphones around his neck. He smiled, friendly and apologetic. My TV was too loud. I'm so sorry. The guard noted nothing unusual. Nathan even invited him in to show that everything was fine. The apartment looked clean, minimalistic. Nothing strange. No signs of distress. Security left satisfied. 2 months later, another complaint came from a different neighbor. This time the report said, "It sounds like someone is trying to talk but can't." Again, security responded. Again, Nathan answered promptly. Again, he apologized. "I have a podcast on. True crime stuff. I'll wear headphones." He offered them coffee. He offered them cookies. He even joked about being the boring brother who never leaves the apartment. Nathan Cole was a master of misdirection. He gave just enough warmth to disarm suspicion, but not enough to invite curiosity. And now investigators know why. Just behind the master bedroom door. A door he carefully kept closed during both visits. Was his sister Rebecca, weighing 79 pounds, dehydrated, trembling, and unable to speak. Because Nathan had welded a titanium dental cage across her mouth. Rebecca disappeared from her college dorm in early 2019. Her family filed a missing persons report, but campus footage showed only that she left the building with her brother. Nathan told friends that Rebecca had moved abroad. He told neighbors their parents had died years ago. Both were lies. Nathan had moved Rebecca into apartment 12B the same week she vanished. He installed blackout curtains, removed the bedroom lock, replaced the doorknob with one that only locked from the outside, and mounted 2 hidden cameras inside the room, one above the dresser, one inside a smoke detector. He watched her 24/7 from his phone. Later, forensic cybercrime analysts discovered Nathan had also set up a private dark web stream titled "Keeping Her Safe, Live." It had one viewer. Just one. Every night. Nathan himself. He wasn't broadcasting for money or for an audience. He was broadcasting for himself. A digital shrine. A control room. Viewers on the dark web typically pay for illegal streams. Nathan paid no one. He didn't share it. It existed solely for his obsession, the satisfaction of watching complete control in real time. The titanium mouth cage Rebecca wore was custom-made. Investigators found the design files on Nathan's laptop, blueprints modified from orthodontic headgear. He had ordered the components individually, assembled the apparatus with dental tools purchased online, and welded it in place with a microtorch. She could not open her mouth more than 3 millimeters. She could not speak. She could not scream. She could only take liquids through a tiny tube Nathan inserted between the metal bars. He fed her nutritional shakes. He timed her bathroom breaks. He monitored her sleep cycles. Nathan frequently spoke into the camera while watching her. "I'm keeping you safe. I'm keeping you quiet. I'm the only one who can protect you." Detectives later described these recordings as some of the most disturbing psychological manipulation they'd ever heard. But the outside world remained unaware until the night of the third complaint. On December 3, 2020, at 11:42 p.m., the resident in 12A heard what they described as a choking gasp. Like someone couldn't breathe properly. Security went to 12B again. Nathan answered. But this time, something felt wrong. His eyes were dilated. His breathing rapid. A bead of sweat on his forehead despite the winter chill. He tried to speak calmly. "Sorry, bad coughing fit. Allergies." But this time, security insisted on entering. Nathan hesitated, just 1 second longer than he should have. That second saved Rebecca's life. Inside, the apartment looked normal. But the sound was unmistakable. A faint, wet rasp. Coming from the master bedroom. Nathan stepped in front of the door. "Please, she's sleeping. Don't wake her." Security pushed past him, opened the door, and froze. Rebecca lay on the bed, curled into herself, skeletal, wrists bruised from struggling against restraints. Her eyes were wide and sunken, staring at the guards with a terror so raw it stopped them cold. She had tried to swallow water and nearly choked because her throat muscles were too weak to function. The mouth cage glinted in the dim light. One guard whispered, "Oh my God." Nathan began screaming, not in fear, but in rage, trying to shove the guards away, yelling, "You're ruining everything." Security tackled him. Rebecca couldn't scream. She couldn't even sob. Tears streamed down her face soundlessly. Her mouth was sealed shut by cold metal. The official police report notes the condition of the room. No windows. No light except a lamp. No phone. One locked cabinet containing liquid meal replacements. A bucket lined with plastic bags. 2 cameras. A laptop running streaming software. A cot bolted to the floor. The walls were covered in handwritten messages, some repeated hundreds of times. "Please someone help me. I am here. I want to go home. Nathan, please let me out." And one sentence repeated more than any other. "I won't make a sound." Rebecca was rushed to the hospital. Doctors determined she had lost nearly half her body weight. Her vocal cords were badly atrophied from lack of use. The skin around the mouth cage had grown raw and infected. Removing the apparatus took 3 surgeons nearly 2 hours. When they finally freed her, Rebecca whispered one sentence, hoarse, trembling, barely audible after almost 19 months of enforced silence. He said, "Talking makes me dangerous." Nathan believed Rebecca needed protection from the world. That only silence could keep her safe. That he alone could control her future. It was obsession disguised as guardianship. Possession disguised as love. Imprisonment disguised as protection. Nathan never provided a motive beyond a chilling statement during interrogation. "She's my sister. Sisters talk. Talking leads to danger. I kept her quiet." He then asked if Rebecca had been grateful. When officers told him she nearly died, Nathan stared blankly before replying. But she was safe. Nathan Cole was charged with aggravated kidnapping, false imprisonment, intentional malnutrition, assault with a torture device, voyeurism, several federal cybercrime counts. He pleaded not guilty. Psychologists concluded he was fully competent and understood his actions. Rebecca entered long-term therapy. She struggles with eating, speaking, and basic trust. She refuses to live anywhere with a locked bedroom door. Birchwood Towers replaced their entire security staff. Apartment 12B has remained empty since the incident. Potential renters always withdraw interest after hearing its history. But the residents swear that late at night, if you walk past the master bedroom door of 12B, you sometimes hear it. A faint gasp. A soft rattle of metal. A girl trying to breathe through a cage no longer there. Story 7, The Vanishing at Gate 8. On July 28, 2021, at 12:42 p.m., the parking lot of a Walmart supercenter in suburban Phoenix, Arizona was packed with shoppers hiding from the 118 degrees Fahrenheit summer heat. Heat shimmered over the pavement. Shopping carts rattled. Children cried. Engines idled as families loaded groceries into the backs of SUVs, trying to escape the blistering sun. Nothing about the scene was unusual. Except what happened to Jacob Ramsey, a 32-year-old HVAC technician, father of two, and former Army reservist, who walked into that Walmart just like everyone else. And walked out for the last time. Security footage shows Jacob leaving the store at 12:39 p.m., pushing a cart filled with snacks, bottled water, and school supplies for his kids. He looked tired but calm, scrolling briefly on his phone as he walked. He loaded the bags into the trunk of his blue Honda Civic, closed it gently, placed his phone and wallet on the hood, then returned the cart like the polite, predictable man everyone described him to be. The final recording of Jacob Ramsey is one of the most baffling clips in modern law enforcement. Jacob steps away from his cart, turns toward the far end of the lot, and walks toward a white van with no license plates slowly rolling past the surveillance camera's field of view. He takes 3 steps. Then 4. Then 5. At step 6, he passes into a blind spot, a 4-second camera gap created by the intersection of 2 older models with slightly misaligned angles. Jacob enters the blind spot at 12 hours 41 minutes and 3 seconds. He never exits. 4 seconds later, when the next camera angle picks up the exact same walkway, Jacob is gone. No struggle. No sprint. No collapse. No shadow. Nothing. Just empty pavement shimmering in the heat. And the white van? Never seen again. When Jacob didn't arrive at his afternoon job, his employer called his wife, Megan Ramsey. She assumed he was stuck in traffic. When he didn't pick up the kids from school, she called a family friend to help. By dinner, Jacob was listed missing. Police arrived at the Walmart at 7:13 p.m. They found Jacob's Honda Civic. Trunk closed. Doors locked. Groceries warm but intact. His phone and wallet still sitting on the hood. Cash undisturbed. Cards untouched. There were no signs of a confrontation. His footprints ended at the blind spot. No footprints continued beyond it. No tire marks suggested he'd been dragged or carried. Except for one thing. A single, 30-meter-long burnt rubber streak, as if a vehicle had made a violent, sudden acceleration. The streak began just outside the blind spot. It led nowhere. There was no matching tire tread. No skid continuation. No melted residue. Just a long, isolated scorch mark on the asphalt. Fire investigators found it so strange that one officer said, "It looked like the tire spun in place but the vehicle vanished." The police reviewed the footage over 200 times. No sign of Jacob. No glimpses of his reflection. No shadows. Nothing that could explain how a full-grown man disappeared on camera in broad daylight. The white van, however, became the center of the investigation. Witnesses described it differently. White van with tinted windows. White SUV, not a van. Had ladders on top. No ladders. No windows at all. Driver was a woman. Driver was bald. Driver had sunglasses. No driver. Conflicting. Useless. Almost impossibly inconsistent. One detail was constant. Every single witness felt like the van had been there 1 second and gone the next. No one remembered it driving away. No one remembered what direction it left. No one even remembered hearing an engine. It was as if the memory of the vehicle dissolved the moment it passed. 3 days later, investigators found something odd. In a dumpster behind the Walmart, they discovered a cheap disposable burner phone, cracked, dusty, unusable. Forensics pulled one single text thread from the damaged memory. A message sent to an unknown number at 11:02 a.m. that day. Here now. Gate 8. And a reply, sent 1 minute later. Wait for signal. Police didn't know what Gate 8 meant until a detective realized Walmart divided its massive parking lot into color-coded sections. The area where Jacob parked was marked. Blue lot, Gate 8. The signal? No one could determine what it was. But the implication was clear. Jacob might have been lured, or coerced, or guided. Yet no messages were found on Jacob's real phone. He had not texted any unknown number. He had not searched for Gate 8. He had not called anyone. Someone else had been planning this. Someone who knew exactly where Jacob would park. Someone who knew about the camera blind spot. Someone who knew how to make a man disappear in 4 seconds. Investigators searched Jacob's life, in no debt, no enemies, no affairs, no criminal ties. He was reliable, dedicated to his family, stable. His wife described him as predictable to the point of routine. Which is what made one security discovery even more unnerving. Jacob had been followed for 2 weeks prior to his disappearance. A white van, same shape, same size, was recorded trailing his commute from work 3 times, and parked across from his gym twice. Never close enough to stand out. Never repeatable enough to confirm identity. Just visible enough in hindsight to chill the blood. The van never approached him. Never interacted. Never violated traffic laws. It just watched. And waited. 8 days after Jacob vanished, an elderly man in a Phoenix retirement community contacted police with an unusual story. He claimed that on the morning of July 28, he saw a white van idling behind the Walmart at around 11:45 a.m., an hour before Jacob arrived. He approached the driver's side, curious. The window rolled down. Inside, he saw a figure wearing gloves. A black visor obscuring the face. No visible features. No visible eyes. Just darkness beneath the visor. The driver said nothing. The witness felt an overwhelming urge to leave immediately. He retreated without asking another question. When police asked him what made him so uncomfortable, he said, "It wasn't that I couldn't see his face. It was that I felt he didn't have one." 2 weeks after the incident, the Ramsey family received an envelope in their mailbox. No return address. No fingerprints. No DNA. Inside was a single photograph printed on matte paper. It was taken inside a parking garage. Jacob stood in the corner of the frame, head turned sharply as if reacting to something behind him. His expression frozen in surprise or fear. Behind him was the back end of a white van. A handwritten message at the bottom read, "He walked right to us." But the truly disturbing part wasn't the content. It was the timestamp. July 27th. The day before Jacob vanished. He had not been to any parking garage that day. He had been at home. All day. With his family. Confirmed by multiple witnesses. The picture could not exist. And yet, it did. To this day, Jacob Ramsey remains missing. No body. No vehicle. No suspects. No confirmed sightings. The Walmart parking lot has since replaced all its cameras. The blind spot has been eliminated. But local employees still avoid Gate 8, claiming customers occasionally report feeling watched there. Some describe hearing an engine start behind them, only to turn around and see nothing. One night manager even claimed that on an empty shift at 3 a.m., while walking past the exact blind spot where Jacob vanished, she heard a voice whisper behind her. Just 4 seconds. She quit the next morning. Officially, the FBI lists Jacob Ramsey as an endangered missing person. Privately, several agents admit the case has details that do not match any known human abduction pattern. One investigator retired shortly after working the case, leaving only one note in her final report. Whatever took him, it didn't need to be seen. Story 8. The 7-minute call. On November 12, 2020, at 2:14 a.m., the Portland 911 Dispatch Center received a call that would haunt its operators long after the official case file was closed. The call lasted 7 minutes and 18 seconds. The caller was Melissa Harper, a 33-year-old mother of one, living in a quiet cul-de-sac on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. What made the call unforgettable wasn't what she said. It was that she never said a single word. All the operator, Rachel Brooks, could hear on the other end was Melissa's unsteady breathing, the faint jingle of a child's bracelet, and a soft, rhythmic tapping sound. Tap. 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 Rachel tried everything. Can you confirm if you're safe? If someone is in the house, say yes. Press any button on your phone. We have your location, officers are on the way. Melissa never responded. But the breathing grew louder, erratic, panicked, shallow, as if someone were trying to inhale through trembling hands. At 2:16 a.m., exactly 2 minutes into the call, something else entered the audio. A second sound. A voice. Not Melissa's. Not human in tone. A soft, dragging whisper, barely audible under the static. Don't hang up. Rachel froze. She replayed it in her headset to make sure it wasn't interference. The whisper came again, this time closer. Don't hang up. Rachel immediately signaled an emergency escalation. 3 patrol units and an ambulance were dispatched to the Harper residence. Inside the dispatch center, protocol says the operator must remain calm, grounded, objective. Rachel broke protocol without hesitation. Melissa, listen to me. Police are almost there. Stay where you are. Stay on the line. Do not move. No response. Just breathing. And the jingle of a child's bracelet. When officers arrived at 2:20 a.m., the Harper house was silent. The front door was unlocked. The lights were off. Power was still on, and nothing appeared disturbed. The officers entered with weapons drawn. The living room was undisturbed. The kitchen spotless. Melissa's purse lay on the counter. Her car keys hung on the hook by the door. Nothing looked wrong. Until they found the phone. It was lying in the center of the upstairs bedroom floor, screen still lit, still recording the active 911 call. The call that was about to reach the 7-minute mark. Rachel was still on the line. Officers crouched next to the phone. Dispatch, this is Officer Kane, we found the device. Caller not in sight. Rachel's voice cracked. Is there a child's bracelet near it? The officers scanned the floor. Yes. A small plastic bracelet, pink, with mold butterflies, lay beneath the bed. Broken cleanly in half. But Melissa had no daughter. Only a 6-year-old son. And that bracelet didn't belong to him. Officer Kane lifted the phone, brought it to his ear. Melissa, are you still there? Still breathing on the other end. Still shaky. Still close. He lowered the phone. Rachel, is this live audio? Rachel swallowed. Yes. Whatever you're hearing is happening right now. But the room was empty. No Melissa. Nothing. One officer shined a flashlight across the ceiling. That's when they saw it. Above the phone, directly on the drywall, written in fresh, Wet streaks? Don't hang. UP. The substance was red. Thick. Dripping. Blood. Officer Kane stumbled backward. Another officer checked the closet, the bathroom, under the bed, every possible hiding place. Nothing. The house was empty. But the call was still live. And Melissa was still breathing into the phone. Detectives and forensic units arrived minutes later. The writing on the ceiling tested positive as fresh human blood. But it wasn't Melissa's. It didn't match any resident. It didn't match anyone in CODIS. It belonged to an unidentified female, approximately 5 to 8 years old. A child. A child who did not exist in the Harper household. Rachel replayed the recording dozens of times. The whisper didn't match any known voice pattern. Not a grown man. Not a woman. Not a child. Something in between. Forensics enhanced the audio. After filtering background static, they identified a new element. A faint, almost imperceptible dragging shuffle, as though someone were moving very slowly across carpet, or something heavy was being pulled in tiny increments. When investigators returned to the house at dawn, searching for crawl spaces or hidden entry points, they found something strange. In the dust beneath the bed, where the bracelet lay, there were patterns, long streaks, slanted, and uneven. As if something had been dragged under the bed, then dragged back out. But no body was found. No fibers. No fingerprints. The drag marks began under the bed. And ended under the bed. With no indication anything left. Interviews with neighbors yielded little. One mentioned hearing the phone buzz repeatedly around 2 a.m., as if vibrating on a hard surface. Another recalled seeing a faint shadow move across Melissa's upstairs window, but couldn't confirm if it was human. Melissa's son, age 6, was sleeping at his grandmother's that night. He was unharmed. When gently asked if his mother had been frightened recently, he said something investigators initially dismissed, until later. Mommy said the girl in the ceiling didn't like when she charged her phone. Detectives asked him to clarify. He pointed upward. The girl watches. She moves when the lights go out. Children say strange things. Investigators assumed it was a misunderstanding. Until they found the charger. It was unplugged from the wall. But coiled neatly. Placed back in its original position. 2 days after the house had been sealed. No one had been inside. And yet, the charger had returned. The official missing persons report was filed within 24 hours. The 911 recording was analyzed by 8 separate specialists: audio, behavioral, forensic, linguistic, psychic crime consultants brought in unofficially by officers who couldn't shake the case. None could explain the voice. None could explain the child's blood. None could explain the drag patterns. None could explain the silent room and the live breathing. The 911 call became part of dispatch training nationwide. Operators listening to it for the first time often remove their headsets halfway through. Something about the whisper. Slow. Wet. Sibilant. Triggers a primal discomfort. As though it was not meant to be heard by human ears. In the months that followed, officers conducted 9 additional searches of the Harper house. They found no new evidence. But patterns emerged. Every few weeks, the phone charger would return to the outlet. Placed gently. Deliberately. At a perfectly straight angle. The drag marks beneath the bed reappeared. Always wiped clean. Between police visits. Always back. Before they returned. Neighbors began reporting electrical interference, lights flickering in patterns, baby monitors picking up breathing from empty rooms, phone alarms activating without prompts at exactly 2:14 a.m. The same time Melissa placed the call. But the most unsettling discovery came from the forensic audio team, 3 months after Melissa vanished. When they isolated the final 30 seconds of the call, they uncovered something beneath the static. A second whisper led under the first. The primary voice. Don't hang up. The second voice. Smaller. Higher. Trembling. Help me. The voices overlapped. The breathing intensified. Something dragged. Something scraped. Something moved. And then the call ended. Not because Melissa hung up. Not because Rachel terminated it. The call cut off mid-breath. As though the phone was suddenly removed from Melissa's hand. Too fast for her to resist. Too quiet for her to scream. Melissa